And that word is such a weird word, and I don't even like that word. But finally, I started getting to the point with setting boundaries of like people asking questions or people inviting me to things, which, you always want to be invited to something. Don't stop inviting me. But when I tell you no, it means no. But then getting to a point of saying, okay, I've asked you 4 times to stop asking me if we're going to try for adoption. 4 times I've asked you. I've asked you 3 times to stop doing this. If you continue with this, we're going to have to take a break here. And I can't deal with this. I can't deal with the fact that this is hard for you, or your curiosity is so high right now that you can't handle it. When I say it once, you want to keep talking about it. My number one job, and I say this in all of my videos, my number one job is to protect my heart, and your number one job is to protect your heart. And if that means taking a break from someone in your life or that you love, it pains me, but sometimes that's what has to happen.
Welcome to The Full Stop, a podcast specifically for those who are childless not by choice, hosted by Berenice Howard-Smith, Sarah Lawrence and me, Michael Hughes. And our aim is to shed light on the many ways people arrive within the childless community and the issues specific to us. In this episode, we were able to bring 3 continents together and talk with Sandy Langhart-Michelet from Louisiana, a part of the states renowned for its warmth and hospitality. And we chat about how do you set boundaries and say no in this type of culture. Please remember, the opinions expressed by our guests are theirs alone and not necessarily the view of The Full Stop. All right, now we've got that out of the way, let's get to know Sandy and what she gets up to.
Sandy, welcome to The Full Stop. Hello.
Thank you. Hello from Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Amazing. How are you today? Good?
I am great. Yes, I'm really excited about chatting with both of you.
I know. We're really pleased to have you with us as well.
Thank you.
Would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners who may not have heard from you? I hope that they do know who you are, but it's always helpful to have an introduction in your own words.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Sandy Langhart-Michelet, and I'm based in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, USA. Lived here most of my life, and started with a journey of infertility 20-something years ago, and really walked through that journey and was really struggling and how do I get through it? And about 9 years ago, I started a private Facebook group called The Childless Life. And that, in conjunction with meeting Jody Day and getting resources from her, really started with my healing. And just recently came out with a book. But I'd love to talk more about the group, talk about the women, all of those things. But I know this is an introduction. So I'm Sandy. I'm from Louisiana, and I'm thrilled to be here. That's the short version.
We've been looking forward to talking to you, Sandy.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit more about the work you do? Because there's obviously quite a lot that you've done in terms of since talking to Jody, and I know community is important to you as well. There's just so much on your website and so much that you've got to give. So tell us a bit more about what you do and how you support people who are childless.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I started off with the website, thechildlesslife.com. And this was 10 years ago, and I was talking with someone and they said, you really need to talk more about this and you need to start a blog. And I said, what is a blog? I will do it. And started it. It's so funny because I feel like I know nothing now, but back then I knew even less. And I was very, very picky about naming The Childless Life because I wanted to focus on not just me, but I wanted to focus on everyone and wanted to focus on living and getting through that sadness and that mourning of discovering childlessness. So I really wanted to focus on the life aspect. So started that, and that went for a while. And then I started to get messages from women who wanted to talk, and very quickly realized that I needed a way for all of us to chat together. And that's when I started the private Facebook group, The Childless Life. And my goal was 100 women. And all I kept thinking was, if I can get 100 women, because I had just recently started a meetup in Baton Rouge, and I had anywhere from 2 to 10 women when we would meet every month. And I'm like, if I could get to 100 women, my gosh, that would be amazing. And 9 years later, we just hit our 9-year anniversary, and we're at 3,500 women, and from every corner of the globe. And that group is such a powerful part of community and healing. And obviously the childlessness is a big aspect of that, but there are conversations about everything. I started a new job, those kinds of things, because while we are here to support each other with the childlessness, there's also the aspect of these are connections that you're making and friends from around the world that, I know you interviewed for a job. I wanted, how did it go? That kind of thing. Also, I think 8 years ago, I was very involved in all of the communities. And when I started the Childless Life and started talking with Stephanie Joy Phillips. And so she reached out about being a World Childless Week ambassador. And I said, absolutely. Yes. And watching how she has grown that from 9 years ago or 8 years ago until now, that's incredible. The most important thing for me with all of that is seeing all of the stories that everyone has and how everyone is in varying phases of grief. And so specifically with a group, I love to see the women that came in 9 years ago and would barely say a word and were just torn and felt broken and sad. And now watching these women who are in a different part of their healing. And now when new women are coming in to the group, they are so protective of those women. And that is so, so cool to me that's what a community is. It's not hearing information one way. It's about all of these women who are supporting each other in various phases. And I've been very, very lucky. I do a lot of speaking gigs in my professional life, my non-childless life. And I have had the opportunity to speak several times about childlessness and what that's like. And it's one of those things that we just don't talk about, which everybody listening to this, I mean, your family, your friends, the community, your job, people don't know what to say. So they either say absolutely nothing or say the craziest thing. And I've got a lot about that in the book, about things we've all heard of the things that people say. But, the most important thing, like you said, is to me is the community and that relationship of growing with people who are like us.
I think that's so important. There's actually an article that we've just released the last podcast, and there's an article in one of the papers over here, The Guardian, which has an enormous reach. And it's actually a Noella McGovern who presents on BBC Women's Hour talking about how the language around infertility is so terrible. And it's quite astonishing that you look at it. And I read it and thought, oh yeah. And I thought, no, yes, that's really, really crap. Yeah. It's just that I've got so used to it. There comes a point sometimes when you think, yeah, I just take it that's kind of what it is, Mm-hmm. It kind of says, it says in the article about, that people, sorry about your miscarriage, I'm sure it will happen soon. She's standing at a buffet, and an acquaintance is filling his plate. And it's just literally kind of, I'm sorry about your miscarriage. I'm sure you'll be a parent soon. Mm-hmm. That's just it, wholly inappropriate. But it's that, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And it's true. It gets
worse and worse and worse and worse. Yeah,
it does, doesn't it? Yeah. We can kind of sometimes, I think there's a kind of vague immunity to it. And I think what's great about communities is that I think that as I say we, because I mean, it's 7 years, Michael, with the podcast. So kind of around that sort of same time as I think started to kind of talk about things. And I think we'd all been talking about it a little bit individually, but as a collective, as the full stop.
Yeah.
That you then can keep in touch with other people. You can keep in touch with the people that are coming in. And I think that's what's so great about World Childless Week, about the Full Stop community, about what you're doing, is that you maintain those links to those early stages where it's so raw and so painful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and
I think it's also given the environment for role models as well. Like you say, Sandy, that you have those who are quite raw coming in and can be nurtured by people of, let's say, wisdom. Mm-hmm. And so, I think that's also a really beautiful thing. And Look, I've seen you pop up on social media doing a lot around boundaries, as an example.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to know, obviously it takes a lot to get yourself, well, we know it takes a lot to be visible. And so I'm interested to see what fired you up to right, I'm getting into boundaries here. What got your blood boiling?
So much. I think so I started the TikTok and the Instagram at the end of last year, November, December, somewhere around that 2025, and started it because I want to be able to talk very openly and freely about things like boundaries, where in the group, I'm very protective of the group and what I don't want to say outside forces because I'm in the group, but I'm very picky about that. So I wanted to start these social media platforms to be able to actually just freaking say what I wanted to say that wouldn't be somehow triggering perhaps for the women in the group. So the boundaries one, I just continue to be amazed at the things, just like Bernie said, what you were just saying about people saying things. And my real job during the day is I work in human resources, and I've been doing that for 20-30 years. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is inclusion. And one of the things that we don't talk about at all is parental status and childlessness as part of inclusion. So a couple of years ago, I had the chance to speak at a SHRM national conference in the United States about inclusion and childlessness, and boundaries was something that I just started talking about more and more and more, because I think that people mean well. And in fact, I just recorded a video that I think that 99% of the people in the world, they mean well. No one wakes up and says, I'm going to go find a childless person and rip their soul out. They don't do that. But I think people, Brittany, like you were saying, people want to say something, and so they don't know what to say. And I feel like I tolerated it for so many years about people saying stuff and people making jokes. And you can have one of my kids that after a while, I started pushing back and started to realize that instead of feeling so down, I could feel myself kind of like I'm more powerful in my own feelings. And I had an issue with a company that I worked for. The company was amazing, wasn't that? But there was a coffee shop in that building. And I would go down and grab coffee every morning for years and years and years. And then finally someone said, well, I don't understand why you don't have children. And I said, well, I'm actually not sure. I mean, no one could ever figure it out. And she said, well, do you want one of mine? And she had been saying that I had heard her say that several times. And this particular day when she said it, she had a picture on the wall and she had three kids. And I said, yes, I would love to have one of yours. And I'm looking at that cute little one, about 5 years old. I can't wait to tell my husband, I said, dark hair, dark eyes, looks just like me. I am coming to get that kid tonight. I'm going to call my husband. I'm taking the rest of the day. And I didn't stop. And I just got more and more and more and more. And then finally she just stopped and I said, I hope that you've learned something about saying inappropriate things to people. Think about what you're saying. And that really, I was like, oh man, that was amazing. But I live in the South. I live in the southern part of the United States, and we are known for hospitality and being polite and yes ma'am and no ma'am and that you never say anything to hurt anyone's feelings. So it took me a long time to finally figure out how to say, no, that is not okay. And I talk about that a lot in the book, because one of the things that really helped me was the amount of questions that we all get. Why don't you have children? Is it you? Is it your husband? My husband has incredible children from his first marriage. Well, it can't be him then. So it's got to be you. What's wrong? Do you know? Have you gone to a doctor? Have you tried IVF? Do you want to do IVF? Can you afford IVF? Do you want to adopt? You don't want to adopt? Where do you want to adopt? All of these questions. And I realized what was really getting me was not the question so much, is that I was shocked every single time someone asked me a question. Like I had never heard the question before, even though I'd heard the question a million times. So I came up with the idea of a question and answer bank. And so I started thinking, what are the top 30 questions that I hear all the time? And it's the same ones that all of us around the world hear, exactly the same ones that I asked and a million others. And then started thinking, what would I say to that? Why don't you have kids? Well, let me come up with something. Well, are you going to try IVF? Well, let me come up with something. So it was more of me preparing myself with the boundary that I knew that I would have and how to respond to it, and then knowing when I would cut it off. So that question and answer bank really put me into a part where I felt like I was much more comfortable in responding to those questions that previously would have crushed my soul.
Yeah. Did that lead to the scripts? Because I know that we're going to title your book. We haven't actually said the title of your book, which is My Family Tree Stops With Me, A Guide to Purpose and Possibility. Mm-hmm. And in that, you've got scripts as well that kind of go through some of those tricky conversations, which I think is just so lovely to read, because actually, if nothing else, you go, I feel that too.
Yeah.
Your example there of someone offering a child, I have done that too. And I can't remember. I just think I got to the end of my tether one day. My patience had gone and someone just blithely said that. And I went, yes, which one can I have? And it was just this silence. And it was just like, and I said, if you're expecting me to dissolve into tears, and I'm not, I'm just genuinely, which one do you feel you're going to offer, and what are you going to tell your child that you've been, idly kind of offering them to people? Just that's not parenting, is it? No, I don't know. And it kind of went off in this rabbit hole where I was answering my own questions and my own observations. But again, I think I think those scripts are just so perfect for those difficult conversations.
Thank you. Those, I had chicken scratch of those for so many years. And when I decided to write the book, I started starting to say the same things over and over again. And I'm like, I need to write these down. So I started writing it down, and then kind of the book kind of came as a result of that. But those were so important to me because so many women that I've talked with have said, Sandy, since I started that Q&A thing and that question bank, it's helped. And we will continue to get questions over and over again because that's what people do. They ask questions. But I talk about the questions and then also things about setting boundaries when people invite you to things.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah.
How do you say no? And again, living in the southern United States, there's so many, and I don't want to say it's just here because everyone is polite, and I don't mean that. But there is such an odd thing about declining an invitation, and that if you're invited to a baby shower, you should attend. Doesn't matter. Yeah. You should attend. And so finally trying to come up with some words and phrases that I thought would help with that. And that very much helped as well. Just, thank you for the invitation. I got it. I'm sure it's going to be beautiful, but not the time for me. And those types of things. Or I saw that the company event is coming up and it's a family day and it looks great, but I'm going to pass. Well, why are you going to pass? Because it's a family day and I would love to attend, but I know that if I attend, there's going to be a lot of children there, and that's going to kind of make me say, well, but don't worry about the kids. No, I'm going to worry about the kids. And let me set a boundary right here. I'm not attending the family day. I appreciate the invitation. I'm sure it will be great, but I will not be attending. Yeah. And that kind of continued to go. And we're just getting comfortable with saying, I'm not going to attend. And I was talking with a friend of mine one time, and she is hilarious. And we've been friends for 20 something years. And she said to me one time, I said, I've got to go to this baby shower and I don't want to go. And I know I'm going to cry in the bathroom. And she said the craziest thing that I've ever heard in my entire life. She said, just don't go. I was like, what? What do you mean just don't go? And she said, just don't go. And I did not go. And I went and got my nails done that day and got a massage and did a couple of other things. And I didn't think about the baby shower once. And I remember thinking, what a simple thing. I thought that though my friends and family were going to ostracize me and hate me and judge me, and they didn't. They understood. I just had to be strong enough to say, I'm not going.
Yeah.
It was pretty easy once I did it. Yeah.
Quite liberating, isn't it, as well?
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of that collective kind of thing as well. I think that the more that there's publications, the more that there's podcasts, there's initiatives like World Childless Week and other things, Sacred Women Retreats, so many other things going on, I think, around some parts of the world. It's not that easy everywhere to talk about childlessness, but I think there's that influence. And I do think there's an element of that people pleasing, that we feel we must go to things and almost that we have to give bits of ourselves away. I've often talk about that in some of the stuff around the full stop, is that it allows, and I think it's the same for your book as well, is that it allows people to build up strength quietly, and then they get a little bit of confidence. They're not having to do it publicly, and it means that they don't have to give away so many bits of themselves or make excuses, because I think it's very easy to go, no, because... And then you have to make an explanation to someone who might not get it, that says a word that is quite or dismissive. And then it can escalate and actually shuts down the conversation, when actually no would have been absolutely fine. No, I can't make it. We've often put stuff in, we're kind of guilty of this, but we'll put things in to our online community, an event or something like that, on days when we know there might be things coming up. So people can legitimately say, no, I've got a date with the full stop. I've got a date. I'm doing something else. I'm coming to a recording. I'm doing a thing. Because people can sometimes feel like they need to have something else in their diary. I perfectly maintain that a date on the sofa with my dog and a good book is a date. It is fine. I'm doing that for me, but it's taken me a long time to go, that's okay, without feeling guilty. But if you've got a good book, you don't tend to think about it anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can feel a little like that sometimes, that need to sort of, defend oneself. And I think maybe we've got into that kind of space, haven't we, where we sometimes can defend ourselves too much. And we don't necessarily need to do that. Yeah.
Sandy, I'm going to bring something up in a minute, but firstly I want to thank you for explaining this, because I think the more voices we can get out there legitimising people's choices to not do things is great, because that's one of the biggest things that we obviously all hear in our communities. How do I do that? And sometimes it can be just as simple as you said. But I'm going to take us off on a tangent, because there's myself and another person who's in the audience right now would love to know why the book is titled My Family Tree Stops With Me, because we are avid family tree builders. So I'm sure this person would like, just like me, would like to know, is there a sniff of genealogy in that? If it's not, that's cool. But I have to ask the question, otherwise she'll never forgive me.
Well, and that's a great. I wish I could say absolutely no. There's not. I would love to be able to say that and cheer silently. But when I started the group, when I started the childlesslife.com, I wanted to. That was such an important thing for me, because everyone in my family, everyone in my dad's family looks just like my dad, and everybody in my mom's family looks just like my mom. So when I was growing up, everybody would say, well, what are your kids going to look like? Like, well, I don't know. I can't wait. Maybe they'll look, I didn't know. And one day I said, my family tree stops with me. And I'm like, that rhymes. Ooh, tagline. And I loved it. And I've been using it for forever now. But it's almost a heart. Well, the other thing is that so many, I have people in my lives that do the whole genealogy thing. And so they've done all of this. And actually in the book, there is a connection tree. I don't call it a family tree. And it takes up 2 pages, both sides. And it's called Connection Tree. And it's just the people in your life that matter. And from any facet of your life. But what I realized was that as we were talking about the family trees, that it was true that at some point I am going to be dropped from the family tree. And when I say that, people say, no, we love you. We would never do that. And I'm like, hang tight. Let's talk about this. So when they used to be done, a family tree and the genealogy used to be done on a big piece of paper or something, there was always, the space and you could add them. Well, realistically, paper can only be so big. So at some point, if there's not a person that is coming from me, this box is now not necessarily needed. And then once we started doing the online, and so are you a big genealogy person, Michael? Do you do Do you?
Yeah. I
Yes.
He's
Okay.
massive. It's just
Massive
like
in it.
huge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so you know that all of those online tools that you can use, that I actually Googled one time, do online family tree and genealogy tools remove, accidentally, this isn't what I typed, my Google search was better, remove childless people. And what I got back from Google or AI, whatever I was using, was, well, not intentionally, but occasionally, if someone is not connected in some manner, they could inadvertently be dropped. And I was like, well, look at that. Look at that. Wow. And that's exactly what I've been saying, is that at some point, because you remember people, I used to talk to my grandma about it, and I'm like, well, tell me about so-and-so. Oh, well, hang on, whose kid was that? That was so-and-so's kid. And you just would keep going up the path. And I'm not going to be like that, because there's not going to be anybody underneath me, which that conversation got into my legacy. Well, nobody's going to remember me then, which got into, well, my legacy truly, truly matters, but I'm going to go ahead and worry about my legacy now and my legacy while I'm living, as opposed to when I'm gone. So it's peeling the onion. There's such a massive piece of peeling the onion when you really start talking about family trees and legacies and people that remember us and all of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's one of the things in the childless men's community. One of the conversations that comes up a lot is that it's about legacy, because we are drilled so much that, we've got to leave something behind, or we are the beginning of something. And we see that a lot in popular media, be it TV and movies, where particularly big things like, and I've mentioned this before, like Game of Thrones, for instance. You watch Game of Thrones, it's all about powerful men, leading these big families, and they are these figureheads that need to be praised. And while we're on the subject, all the childless men in that particular show are all flawed. So anyway, that's another issue.
Oh, you're right. I never even caught that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Now I need to go back and look at all the characters. That is crazy.
Yep.
Okay, keep going. Sorry. But yeah, you're right.
So now I've got to retrain the thought back. Okay, family tree. So what you're saying, it resonates greatly with me, in that you're the last one. And we were talking just off camera, Berenice and I, before we started, about when you do these things, you have these branches where they go nowhere. And I've got quite a few of those, and you sit there and think, oh, what were they like? Who were they? What happened? And I was just saying to Berenice, for me, it's like you say, that living legacy where I'm amassing content. So somewhere, generations down the line, someone's going to go, oh, it stops, but there's all this stuff that they can delve into to go, that's who they were. Yeah. But anyway, I went off on a tangent. Sorry.
No,
it's a great tangent. Yeah, it's not a tangent at all. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's very important, though, isn't it? Because it just lends that kind of curiosity, I think, as well, and why people do different things. I have done my genealogy, but my family are just so vast, it got quickly kind of like, oh my God. And also they were sort of slightly dull, the immediate family. They just lived in one area. It gets more exciting as you get further back, and it was interesting. But anyway, what my interest from that came from, I used to do hand lettering quite a lot. So calligraphy and hand lettering family trees on paper. So that chimes with me, Sandy, what you said, because as you say, paper is only so big and people want them for their walls. And I used to do them and it was fine and get them framed and off they go. But sometimes it was trying to fit maybe someone in, and you'd be just like, and as I became aware that childlessness was part of my lexicon, I suppose, I'm going to get them in. They're going in somehow.
They're going to be right in the corner, but they're going to be on.
The story is, and then I think, oh, I hope they're all right. And then before you knew it, had I have had Ancestry.com at the time, I probably would have gone and looked them up and sort of like befriended dead childless people. But only because I think, oh no, this is an elitist. And I don't know why they might not have been. I mean, I don't know. And sometimes stuff just doesn't get recorded. It's like I know that on one of my fairly immediate family members, several generations back, that the child is actually missing from there, and we've got to bring all that back in. It's just kind of the way that data is recorded, and it's just because of an early death for the child, but they are still nevertheless born. They lived, and it's important to have that legacy there. But yeah, I used to get kind of really determined to put them all into this thing, and I still do it a lot with history books as well. I work quite often in historical publications, and people will send me through a great big kind of like family tree, and they are very careful often to make sure everyone's in it, but you're very aware that lineage ends and they become a name, but also it's quite lovely to know that they are recorded in a book, that they are there in print, and they were not forgotten, and they are there in a frame on someone's wall. I think that's so important.
That is nice. Yeah. That is nice. And I like the idea of hanging that. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, just, it is odd to think that at some point, because there is no one beneath us, there is no, and I don't mean beneath, I mean, there's no line with a box underneath.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And does that mean that I did not live? And generations from now, no one is going to remember that I existed because of that. But Michael, to your point, I think all of us we all have an impact, and it's in varying degrees. But we all have some type of impact, and we make a contribution to the world in some manner. I remember when I wrote, 10 years, I guess, 11 years, I don't know. I did a big Facebook post, and I had never talked about my childlessness ever. And my family knew that there was not a child around, but my family didn't really ask a lot of questions. My mom did, of course. My mom did, but there weren't a bazillion questions. And finally, one day I had it, and it was a Saturday morning, and I typed out this long Facebook post about, I am not having a breakdown. I am coming to terms with my life as a childless person. And here you go. And I just started bullet point after bullet point and talked about all of these different things and things that bothered me and things that hurt and how frustrated I was and comments that people said and that you can't go anywhere. And Mother's Day is the Voldemort of holidays. That's what I call it, that it's just, you should not talk about it. Like, it's just so painful. And I pushed send, and my husband and I had a busy Saturday that day. And I thought my mom is going to like the post because she's my mom and likes everything. And that's about it. Well, when I came back that night and looked, I was absolutely blown away. And the whole point of this is that someone commented privately, they private messaged me and said, you may not, we were Facebook friends, but we all get Facebook friends, but you're like, I remember the name, but I don't really. And she said, and you don't remember this, but 20 years ago, I was having a very, very rough time and thinking about ending my life. And you called me. And I didn't even remember calling, but it meant something to her at that time. And she remembered it 20 years later. And all of us do things like that, where we have a reach out or a touch point or a friendly hello or something where we make a difference in somebody's life. And as childless people, I find that we beat ourselves up so badly because we don't have a massive, grandiose thing of bringing children into the world. And it is heartbreaking and it is sad. But at the same time, that's not what I'm going to be remembered for. And that's not what the three of us and the childless people in the world are going to be remembered for.
If the topics in this episode chime with you, you can get in touch with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Insta, LinkedIn and Blue Sky. And we love your feedback. Childless Not By Choice listeners can carry on the conversation with us in our safe place at the Full Stop online community. For more details on how to join and to claim a free month trial on us, please visit www.thefullstoppod.com. We'd like to give a huge thank you to the current members of our awesome online community, because it's down to them that we can keep the lights on for the podcast, and look forward to giving back to the childless community as we grow.
We're going to be remembered for the kind things that we do right now. Mm-hmm. And that to me is an unbelievable legacy. When I did the book launch, it was in November, and we had people, family and friends in the community were there, and I had about 150 people there, and trying not to cry with emotion and just the pride and just the I was just so honored that so many people came. Well, one of the things that I did was I had a huge tree that I had painted on a board, and I had leaves, green leaves, and every person that came in, my sister-in-law would say, with the exception of children, what is your legacy? Write it down. And so at the end of the night, the tree was full of different color green leaves. And I had several people walk up to me that night and say, I don't know what my legacy is outside of my children. And they were devastated. Mm-hmm. And I just, it was such a because I didn't expect that. I expected everyone would have all of these things. But I had a couple of people say, well, my legacy is my children. And I said, well, I am going to challenge you to think outside of that, because you were an amazing human being before you had children. Think about that, and think about the people that you have interactions with every single day. That's your legacy. And that to me was so, so powerful that people were actually thinking about, what is my legacy? Well, you have a great legacy. You're living it every single day, and people are going to remember you, and they're going to remember you for 1,000,001 things, not necessarily take your children out of the equation. Does that mean you're not going to be remembered? No, you're a great person. You're an amazing cook, and you started a shelter for dogs and all of these things that you did, or you were very kind to the woman at the dry cleaner who needed to hear it. That's a big thing. That makes a difference in people's lives. So the grandiose changing the world. Let's change your world. Let's focus on changing our own world and changing the day of the person in front of us. And then that builds and builds and builds and builds.
That's amazing. Awesome. That's fantastic. I want to just go to there's a review that caught my eye, and from the Amazon site on the US. And it said that if you're the parent, aunt, uncle, or friend of a woman who is trying to get through the pain of not being able to have a child, this book will be an asset to you and some peace for her. I never realised how every suggestion on doctors, clinics, or adoption was just tearing my daughter apart. She would tell me, that's not helpful, Mum. But I thought I had to find another way to help. I wished I'd been able to read this book years ago, so I would not have added to her stress. If I'd had this book years ago, I would have purchased one for myself and one for her. I recommend it 110%. And I think that is just actually a testimony to your legacy, because it puts very much clear, I think, how important it is that people do speak out, because we've talked a lot in this conversation, and we do a lot on the Full Stop about how we change childless people's lives. But I know that I've got certainly some friends, quite a number of friends who are parents, who listen to the Full Stop, who listen to the transcripts, might not listen to the podcast, but they would definitely download the transcripts, and they go off and they read them and have been enormous cheerleaders. There is one person out there who said that she'd been a better aunt had she have known about the Full Stop and had she have met or understood what we do. So I think that review is so special, because it's changed. And Michael and I'm going to say, because Michael, you might not forgive me for this, but we had this moment at Story House, didn't we? When and I've met the lady recently. I won't name names, but she sat behind us in the theatre at Story House when you last came over, and it was on the last session, I think, that year, and she tapped us on the shoulder, didn't she? And her mum was with her, and they both said that the people talking about childlessness, specifically the full stop, but also the guests that we'd had and the podcast. They were huge fans because they learnt from the guests. And her mum said, I know much more about childlessness and what my daughter has gone through because of the guests and because of the podcast and because of all the things that they've learnt from all the guests that have come on here, including obviously your voice will be added to our library of voices, Sandy. And I think that's just so wonderful that it's not just, we are changing people's lives now. But when I always think about childlessness, I think it's also what happens to future people. Might be a parent, but their children could be affected. Their children's children could be affected. The niece, the nephew, the cousin, someone is affected because statistically you're very likely to know somebody in your family group or in your workspace as well. So I just wanted to just draw the listeners' attention to that review because I think that's pretty special. So yeah, that's some legacy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
When you were talking about, you go, Michael.
No, sorry, I'll just agreeing with what Berenice said. Absolutely.
Working in human resources, I have a very unique spot of being in where I'm the one in my company that designs the benefits plans, but I'm also an employee, so I get the benefits plans. And so talking with a lot of my HR friends about things that we do unintentionally. So kind of, Bernice, when you were talking about it's not just for the childless people, but the way that leaves are done. And I could talk for a billion hours on stuff like this, like parental leave and all of that, which, oops, I just dropped my ear, which I believe that parental leave is important, but I also think that leave is important. And I had someone who is a CHRO in another company, and she called me and she said, I want to talk about your thoughts on leave, paid leave of absence and what that looks like. And then just general leaves of absence. And they actually changed their leave policy in their company to be more open, where it wasn't just for people who had children and who had time away. And I remember when I've got a golden doodle now named Ryder, and he has his own Instagram, and he's that dog. I tell you what, everywhere we go, people stop that. Nobody wants to talk to me. Everybody wants to talk to that dog. And when we had our chocolate lab before, and he got very, very sick, and I took off a couple of days, and it wasn't even a conversation with anybody in my company because they understood. And then Ryder got very ill, and I think I missed 3 or 4 days. And I messaged my boss and I said, look, something's going on. I don't know what it is. We're getting ready to take him to the doggy hospital, but I may miss a couple of days. And the response was, oh my gosh, I hope he's better. That should be the response, because when you're talking to an employee, you're talking to a human being, and whether or not I am taking care of a child or I am taking care of someone who means so much to me in my life, that is a big part of my life. There are very few people who know me around here that don't know me as Ryder's mom, because he's in every Facebook post. I mean, he's everywhere. And so that matters to me. So that mattered to my company at that day. And we need to, as employers all over the world, think about those things that leaves are typically structured around children, and there are a lot of other opportunities. So I've got a kind of a section in the book talking about that, but also about medical professionals and how do we kind of set boundaries for medical professionals, but then also how do we educate the medical community that childless women and childless men exist. And one thing that I say is that there are 2 kinds of women in the world: those that already had kids and those who soon will. Well, there's me and there's you. So how I messed up my feet. I decided one day I wanted to be a runner. I have zero athleticism in my body, but I decided one morning, I bought some shoes. They weren't even running shoes, put my hair in a ponytail and took off. Well, 2 weeks later, I was at the foot doctor and I had plantar fasciitis in both feet. And I was asked, I think 5 times, if I could possibly be pregnant. And I was in my early 50s at the time, 5 times. And there were signs everywhere. If you think you're pregnant, whatever. They had magazines in the doctor's office about how to choose the right binky and the right pacifier for your child. In my 0 articles or magazines on feet. And I'm like, what are we doing here that it is this uncomfortable? And then also I have a section on for the religious leaders. I am in South Louisiana, but the southern United States, and religion here is so unbelievably important in faith and to so many people and to me as well. And one of the things that I remembered when I got married is the person performing the ceremony said something about, and if children, something about having children. Well, I was 32. My husband was 43 when we got married. He had 2 children from his first marriage. We had never discussed having children with them. We had never discussed having children because it wasn't something that I was even sure at that moment if I wanted. Yet here was a religious leader in front of all of my friends and family was setting the expectation that we were going to have children. And so every single time I am sitting in a wedding now and I hear that, like, I certainly hope that person, that couple discussed that and that they were okay with them bringing it up. Because I remember lying awake at night and bawling my eyes out that not only have I I felt guilty about and shame for me not being able to have grandchildren for my parents or nieces and nephews for my brother. But now I'm feeling like I'm letting down my entire faith-based community because in front of all of my friends and family. So it's those things that I don't think that anybody wakes up with that intention, but because having children is such a thing that people do, that it's an odd thing when people don't. And so people just don't know what to say. It's just absolutely incredible to me. One of the things with boundaries that I think was also interesting was the idea of consequences. And that word is such a weird word, and I don't even like that word. But finally, I started getting to the point with setting boundaries of like people asking questions or people inviting me to things, which, you always want to be invited to something. Don't stop inviting me. But when I tell you no, it means no. But then getting to a point of saying, okay, I've asked you 4 times to stop asking me if we're going to try for adoption. 4 times I've asked you. I've asked you 3 times to stop doing this. If you continue with this, we're going to have to take a break here. And I can't deal with this. I can't deal with the fact that this is hard for you, or your curiosity is so high right now that you can't handle it when I say it once. You want to keep talking about it. My number one job, and I say this in all of my videos, my number one job is to protect my heart, and your number one job is to protect your heart. And if that means taking a break from someone in your life or that you love, it pains me, but sometimes that's what has to happen. And so I had a couple of those questions as time went on. And luckily I didn't have to go no contact because that would have devastated me. But every time I would see some of these friends and family, I would tense up. I'm like, wait, why am I tensing up? Why am I the one that feels uncomfortable? I'm the one who's struggling with trying to get pregnant. Why do I feel even worse about that? And that's really when I started talking more and more and more about boundaries, of saying that there are some lines that none of us as humans should ever cross. And you continually asking me questions and sending me articles and doing things, you are breaking my heart, and knock it off.
Yeah. It's also that thing of just trying to fix somebody, as if the implication is that you are broken and you are acceptable as you are. We all are. We don't need fixing. We've thought of them all already, and isn't it enough that we're doing enough to ourselves anyway? And it's exhausting as well, isn't it? It's absolutely exhausting, and that tension that we hold can often have permanence, I think, as well. I know that I've been to family things since, or to other stuff that I might not have wanted to have gone to or would have avoided before, but because I can kind of literally sit here and go, listen to the full stop, or I talk about this stuff. You don't have to ask me now, listen to the podcast, or read this book, do this, whatever it might be. But I will still go in with that tension, even though actually the last time I did something with like a big family thing was actually all right. It was fine. But I told myself so many stories in my head based on evidence, actual evidence. But I've kind of taken that and gone, that's what they're like. This is what it is. And I'm going to face all this, but I'm going to go because I'm like this. And I'm going to go because I'm going to take one for the team. You know how it is. And then you think, actually, I'm quite enjoying myself. The buffet's a bit crap, but, you know, it's okay. I'm actually quite enjoying it. And actually going in and feeling sometimes quite graceful and quite powerful, which was something I'd never really sort of experienced before. So my dog's just walked in. I also owned by a dog as well. Yes. And no one really knows my name apart from him. But it is that kind of like that sense of sort of, okay, I know so much more. One of my favourite phrases is more, not less. But still, sometimes I am astounded by some people's lack of empathy. I just blown away by it and left speechless sometimes that people can even begin to say things. And I wonder, had I have had children, would I have been like that? And I like to think that I still would have been a compassionate person. You know, we will never know. But I do think you're right, that I think there's a lot of heart in what we do and a lot of nurturing as well. I mean, you talked about that at the beginning of the conversation. You were talking about the childless life and about nurturing people. And that is another form of parenting. It just doesn't happen to be the giving birth kind. It's still looking after people and still taking care of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so
yeah. We are more than we think we are. And also sometimes occasionally angry.
That and Kubler-Ross's Phases of Grief, let me tell you, the anger one, I went through all the phases of grief in the book, and the anger one was the one that was the easiest to write because I was like, let me tell you one thing. I was so mad about everything. I was so mad about everything. And then just because, you know, when you're going through that, everybody you see is pregnant. Well, everybody you see isn't pregnant, but that's how it feels.
Yes.
And people that would say things to me, I jumped. I would get so mad. And I am not an angry person. But during that, I'm like, I can control none of this. But what I can control is, well, really, I say I can't control my anger. Well, that's silly for me to say that the way that I lashed out was being angry. That sounds silly. But that the anger is something that we're mad at everyone and no one. And having a diagnosis of pretty much, we have no idea why you can't get pregnant, that made me even more angry.
Yeah.
Because now I don't even have anything to be mad at. I want to be mad at the fact that I don't have enough progesterone or I've got broken up, but I can't be mad at anything. So obviously it's something I did. Obviously, since there's no medical definition, obviously it is something that I did wrong when I was in high school, when I was in college, or when I did what. And so everything kind of builds into something else, which brings you in the guilt and shame that we talked about. And I'm not deserving of any joy and happiness. And we are.
Yeah. And then when you get people making these comments about, oh, it wasn't meant for you, it kind of adds more stuff. Like, I'm dealing with my own shit here. I don't need your observations, but that can really come up, I think, quite a lot in conversations that I've had with people, but also comes up a lot with our listeners as well, and with our guests and in our community too. People will talk about how, you know, not having children clearly there's a reason for that. And then you look at some people in the world who are parents and think, just because you should doesn't mean that you ought to. And there's a whole kind of tricky kind of road to go down there that I think comments and setting boundaries and allowing people space to make observations, I think can lead to some very sticky conversations that are not very good for our well-being as well. It doesn't end with one comment and doesn't end with one boundary. There are others. It's constantly coming to sort of put up fences all the time. I know Sarah talks about this fabulously when we've had conversations around boundaries, and sadly she's not with us today, but it is that kind of having to sort of adjust them and readjust them, and them a bit in order to kind of like, because people that ask these things and are in our lives may learn from us, and then they may, well, I don't know, be able to be let in a little bit more with kind of, I don't know, a little bit of kind of awareness. It's complicated, but so very important that we do have them. But building them, I think, comes really much from that community as well, doesn't it? Yeah.
Well, I love watching when somebody will post something in the group and they're like, my mother-in-law just said this and I didn't know what to say, so I froze. Well, right after that, bam, 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 bam. You could have said this. You could have said this. And that's so helpful. Some of them are hilarious. I would have told her. And people are like, no, you wouldn't have. But it's just so interesting that everybody has a different way of dealing with things. And so I love reading all of the comments that women write, and men as well, is that just I never thought about saying that, or I never saw. And that, I think, gives you a little bit more confidence. And that's when, so taking the confidence of reading that other people are doing it, and then also the confidence of doing something like the question and answer bank. And then also realizing that we are responsible for protecting our heart. And all of those things kind of start to build up to where we can say, this is not okay. And then finding the advocates and the allies in our lives who are now realizing, I love to hear my friends and family do things or say things that they never would have had I not gone through this journey, and watching them now protect all of us. And that is just incredible. And I remember somebody on Facebook a couple of weeks ago wrote something about pets should not be allowed at some type of event that was happening. And my mom texted me and she's like, well, kind of got in it. I'm like, what did you say? What did you say? And she's like, well, you know what? She has zero filter. She does not care. She has zero filter. And she said something like, well, you know what? A dog's never bothered me at that, but you're screaming children. I'm like, Mom, shh. But the thought,
you love your mom.
Yeah. Oh, she will go to town. Let me tell you, she will go to town. But it's so funny that having people like that in our lives that will say, stop. Yeah. It's not okay for you to say something mean and something rude, and it's not okay. And then we all kind of get a little bit better. Not years ago, probably 3 years ago, I was on a panel and it was about inclusion, and it had business leaders from our, kind of our southern part of our state on it. And one of the questions that we were asked was, is there any group that is not, any inclusion group that is not discussed? And everybody looked at me. I'm like, oh, I got this one. Let me tell you. And started talking about childlessness and the challenges of being a childless person in a community that expects everyone to be, and all of these different things. And I was watching the people in the audience and everybody's head was like, yes, 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 yes. And do you know that after that, the moderator, when he got the microphone back, said, well, I bet you there are some parents in this world, in this room, who sometimes wish that they were childless.
Oh, for God's sake.
And for somebody who is so confident about speaking out and zero fear about talking with people now about boundaries, I just froze. And that was the last question. And then they wrapped up and everybody clapped and everybody started leaving. Well, I had some of my friends walk up to me and say, that was so horrible. That was so rude. That was so disrespectful. And it did not bother me from a break my heart anymore. It bothered me from, you didn't hear one thing that I said.
Yeah, it's dismissive, isn't it? Yeah.
It was so and the joke of it. And he meant nothing by it. He was trying to get a joke and a laugh. So, but I'm telling you, I just froze. But it was so odd to me that in that particular environment, that was okay. But what happened was watching my friends come up to me, and they were like, let's go. And I loved that because they never would have done that had they had not walked alongside this journey with me. And how powerful is that? So those are women now who are going out there and helping, and they see things from different eyes now, which is what we all want to do. We all want to be able to see the world from other people's viewpoints. And that's what makes the world better, when we all have compassion. And another one of them that was in the room said that she does a form that when she does events and trainings and all of this, and it will say, tell me about your family, and tell me about, kids and all these things. And she said, I really don't use that for anything, but I ask because that's what I've always asked. And she said, but I want to get information so I have something that we can talk about in these sessions. And I said, well, what about a question like, tell me about who matters to you? And that's what she started adding. And now when I'm in groups or social things, I'm like, well, tell me about the people in your life that matter to you. I've got a dog. Great. Tell me about your dog. Because tell me about your family very often gets into children, which is fine. But I'm not in those instances worried about the people that have children. I'm worried about the people that do not, or that had a child and lost a child, or that have struggled with something, or that could physically not have children. Those are the people that I want to be able to ask questions to, like, tell me about who matters to you in your life. That's such a broad question that you can get anything. You may not even talk about your family. You may talk about the people at your office. Cool. They matter to you, so they matter to me.
I love
Absolutely.
that, Sandy. That's such a nice question. I always think family is such a small word, but means so much. But it often, does result in that whole kind of conversation around children and opening it out to something else. I think, Michael, one of your questions is, who would you have at your dinner party, your ideal dinner party? And it makes people think an awful lot more broadly than just, ends and begins with children. Thank you so much, Sandy, for joining us. I love that we've ended with something around allyship as well, and that actually, because we want to talk about allyship, but that's another podcast, because we think that's so important as well. There's acts of allyship, how people who listen to the podcast who may have children or decided not to have children, or they've made a conscious decision, how they might act as allies and how we can all meet in the middle. I love that grey space, but that's a conversation for another time. I think there's some lovely little gems here that people could pick out if they want to go out and do a little bit more activism, Thank you. As well, and to advocate for people. I think that's just such an important thing to do.
Thank y'all for having me on here. This is, I have been, obviously followed y'all for a long time, and just so honored to be a part of this, and getting to talk more about childlessness and boundaries, and how to protect our own hearts, and how to support each other. At the end of the day, like I said, the way that we're going to be remembered is by how we're treating others and how we're making the world better, even if it's a tiny thing. And at the end of the book, I put something like, don't worry about changing the world, worry about changing your world, and just worry about yourself. And then on those days when you feel like you can't get out of bed, you don't have to. But the days that you do, get out and show the world who you are, and take one step, then another, then another. And that's how we do it.
Love it. Exactly.
Thanks, Eddie. Thanks for listening. And we hope you enjoyed time with Sandy as much as we did. And you can find more of what we get up to at www.thefullstoppod.com, where you can join our listeners list and ways in which you can support our work. But the best way would be to join our online community, where you can both support our work but also become part of what others are calling one of the best spaces on the internet for support and community. And as always, it's important for us to let you know you are not alone.
So true.
I've really enjoyed this, Sandy.
Thank you.
I feel quite I'm going to get all warm and fluffy now. I feel a connection with this because listening to you talk about how you started your blog 11 years ago, you live in Baton Rouge. There must be something in the water in Southern America, because I started my blog in Quincy, Northwest Florida, which I know is only about a 5-hour drive from you, about 11 years ago. So it's reminded me of that. So we're like soul siblings.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
This is like, actually, there's a whole thing with the 7 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon. It's like the 7 degrees of separation from Michael Hughes. It's the same thing.
I love that. I love it. That is
What's your connection to Michael Hughes?
Yes.
And he'll find one. Don't you worry. It'll be something.